What's up? Welcome to the Post Reality Podcast. Jon, Micah, and today what we're breaking down is, would you go ahead and read that?
I will. We are talking about secret weapons and psychologists, behavioral scientists, and how they manipulate a message to make you think and feel a certain way, also known as salespeople. But what we're covering today is a whole new level, and I actually believe that most politicians do this naturally, but I believe Trump is now, he's the same level as Obama with the refining of this, I call it neurocognitive programming. We'll touch on a couple pieces of how it works. So should I just read something else, John?
No, I don't think so. I think we need to dive in, and this isn't about that information as much as it is how you feel about that information and what it means to you. Because we got to dive in and get right to the old brain here. The old brain being the part that makes decisions. And what I want to know is, why does that matter to you at all?
For me, I would say nobody likes to feel like they're being manipulated, being sold on something that's not their own choice. So I would say it makes me feel manipulated. What about for you, John? What does it make you feel?
It makes me feel like old news, big whoopty. Like we've been living in ever since they've had advertising, ever since they've had media. That's exactly what advertisers are doing. People have been doing it as long as there's been, newspapers and everything about it is just, to me, saying big whoopty. Doesn't matter to me.
Oh no, that makes sense. That's what I thought before.
Before what?
Until I learned a little bit about how I make decisions and how the neuroscientists say you make decisions. When I learned it and I saw it in action, I was blown away. It's almost like I believed beforehand that I had free will and I could be master of my destiny, and then afterwards I said, I am a fucking robot, and I will believe not whatever, but I will be pushed into a certain direction if I'm not conscious of I'm being pushed. And it was on a whole new level, not given other options besides, let's just say.
How long has this been a new idea to you?
About a year, same time. This was the entire rethinking of how reality works and how I worked.
And this is important to you because?
Well, now that I know, I can I can persuade other people. I can persuade you, John.
Instantly, he's persuading me.
Well, yeah, there's some instantaneous things. You, as a salesman, you were the one who introduced me to a lot of the ideas. You know how you ask, what's that, when you ask open-ended questions and it opens people up.
Yes.
And that allows you to develop ideas and sell products to them. Most of the general public don't know what an open-ended question is and what it does. Maybe you could tell them. Give them an example. You're a pro at it. You do it all day probably. This is not knowledge that most people have, John.
It pretty much, when you ask an open-ended question, it's like giving somebody a Trump-sized room to work in instead of putting them in a little apartment building of space. So when you ask them if you ask a short question, the shorter the question, likely the longer the response.
Give me an example of an open-ended question.
All right. What do you do?
That's perfect. That's way wide open. I can relate to work, family, what I'm feeling. It really pulls emotion out. It pulls the person out of their shell and allows them to. Do you think it allows them to bond with you, or to what does it do that's so powerful?
Anytime somebody reveals something about themselves to you there is a certain trust that goes into that.
Boom, building the trust. I like that. It does. It does.
And this is kind of an observation that I've noticed a lot of the time, probably when kids are growing up and they get to a certain age, their parents are asking them questions, but they're all closed-ended questions, or they have kind of a, well, why would you do that? As opposed to, well, hey, what were you thinking you'd like to do next with I don't know, with your project? Or how would that work? How would that work? Ask, somebody asks their kids, how does that work, instead of, why would you do that? Or isn't that going to be, it leads people into corners. Well, I heard that what Donald Trump does is he speaks to the old brain. He uses words that speak to our most primal cognitive functions. So he goes right to it, man. He says things that talk to your inner child.
Yeah, totally.
And that's actually a part of Donald Trump that I admire.
John, you didn't just give Donald Trump a compliment. Oh my gosh, do not let this get on the internet.
Oh, well, it's because I can respect that. That's something that I can say, wait, I think this is cool how he does that he figured out how to influence people. Just like I think that I have to respect him a little bit for figuring out how to win an election. By
I
taking
agree,
an
and
angle.
that's why this is so important for me, is because it demystifies ideologues, and it demystifies people who we think of as supernatural or extraordinary. A lot of what I recognize in Obama is this way where he speaks that does something to you it's amazing. And people, when he first came on the scene, he was like revered, like he was gonna part the oceans, I forget what the thing was. And my wife was crazy about him. I was like, I didn't see it personally. Like it wasn't as moving to me. But now that I see the power of let's call it persuasion, or the power of how these words affect people, I can't go back to not seeing it. And so I see it everywhere now, where how I would speak to my wife and how it would make her feel a certain way. And just changing the words literally changes your life. How you interact with the people changes your life. I have a book about one of the neuroscientists that was hired on Obama's 2008 election. His name is Robert Cialdini, and he read a book called, the one I read is called Persuasion, and it breaks up all the points of how it works. And one of the biggest ones was grabbing people's attention. If you have a point that grabs your attention, everything that comes after that makes you associate this attention point with the next piece.
I love how you're using your hands now and they're not holding your phone, because that's one of my trigger actions is because immediately when somebody's on their phone, this happens to you all the time.
Yeah.
When somebody's on their phone, they're not engaging. They're not focusing enough on their on getting to the old brain, on influencing somebody. Now, I respect the information that somebody's looking for at that time, maybe. But I do think that most people are trying to show you something that has some sort of merit. But I do it all the time. I'm talking to somebody, I'm flipping through my phone. It's so hard not to do that in this day and age. And really, if Obama or Trump were up there flipping through their phone while they were trying to land some persuasion on you, forget about it.
Yeah, totally.
And we can all kind of learn from that. People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So I just want to say, Micah, I'm not dissing on you. I'm saying this is part of the life that we deal with, and we're talking about persuasion. Got to be 100% into it to do it.
That's a perfect example of there's a non-verbal cue that you pick up on when I'm not speaking to you. I'm looking through my phone. My tone of voice is different. There's a whole bunch of different pieces, and for me, a year ago, I didn't think these pieces were important. I didn't think that these gestures and movements and tone really influenced me in my decision making, and now I believe it influences me, let's say 90%. The decisions I'm making are not based on, let's call it reason or logic, or they're made up in my head on the fly based on subconscious and non-verbal ideas.
And you probably, yeah, maybe when we're watching this back, or well, when you're listening to it, see if you can, if you listen to it twice. I don't know if anybody will besides us. When you listen to it twice, can you tell when he put down his phone? Because I sure can when I'm looking into this video, which we record this in a video, that because he's using his hands. He's been very animated. He's
very animated. I love this. I wonder what this means. This L or this. I know that when you put your fingertips together, this means I am an expert. I'm very confident in what I'm saying. I know that if you have your arms open and palms up, it means you're very open.
Yeah.
You're being honest. All these little different cues that help me to communicate better now. It's like a superpower, kind of. I wouldn't say a superpower, but
that's a good comparison, I think.
I really believe it is how Obama and Trump both won. It's using this superpower. And let me put that into perspective. In our political system, there's only two candidates, so one of them's going to win. But I believe this is the edge that they both had to beat their opponents. Like if it was a race between 10 people, it's going to help. It's going to help. I don't know if you'd win, just based on this, but I believe it was in a certain situation, it is the deciding factor of who comes out, who persuades.
Well, without a doubt, I think in this last election, because it was hard to watch Hillary, and she was boring, and she looked like she'd been over-ironed, And, and then Trump just had so much flavor. And that's what I respected about what Donald Trump did, was that he figured out how to win, and he was very calculated in the way he did it. I think that it was the expense of perhaps America's soul, which I hope we can get it back. But, yeah, I do feel like there was a lot of that went along with it as win, which is just like a lot of the time, like the win for Lance Armstrong. It had to do with steroids.
Yeah, there was a lot of what we normally think of. And I suppose that's what shook me out of, that's what pushed me to learn and understand, because it was so, I didn't think that the bad guys win what I was looking at as the bad guy, or the crudeness. I thought that, for me, I was looking at it and saying, how do people believe that he's not, how can they vote for him? How do you vote for this?
Yeah.
But I understand it now, and it really demystifies him being a crazy clown. He's not, to me now, he's not a crazy clown. He is a
malignant narcissist.
No, not even that.
No, he's a malignant narcissist. In my opinion, he's a malignant narcissist. That I've mentioned that I have some respect for him for what he did, how calculated he was, and the fact that he was able to go and let anything slide off him the way he did. But everybody around Trump got whacked right in the balls. I mean, you look at the people in his proximity, and they take all of the heat for what Trump does, which is a classic classic sign that somebody may be a malignant narcissist, because they deflect so well that it falls on the people around them.
That's definitely a possibility. Definitely a possibility. That's the problem, is when we're looking at these, when you're looking at any storyline or somebody you're not familiar with, or you're taking in information from a television screen, and that information is processed, and you don't really know what you're getting. You can go by the source a lot, and that's where I think you look at, depending on who you are, you go and get your information from different sources, and you ignore the other ones because it's presented in a way that is palatable to you, and it plays your story, so you don't have to have any. I think it breaks down for me where are we at so divided? And that's just another piece of the puzzle